Well, I started my career in the mushroom industry in 2004, where there was a long queue, people waiting to get a job on the mushroom farm in Western countries. A couple of years ago, maybe around 2009, 2010, the queue was empty, so more or less the farm has the required number of employees, or a little bit shortage, but there was no people waiting for the job. Couple years later, 2014, 2015, there was no queue on the employees, but there was a queue of the vacations on the farm. So the shortages was 10, 20%, in some countries 30% lack of the harvesters, so they were not able to pick all the mushrooms that the farm produced with the classic strains. So what the growers try to did, underpin the rooms, trying to get the generation, so less people could pick the same amount of mushrooms, but with the classic strain, which can easily overpick in the right condition overnight, sometimes it wasn't possible. So in the modern times, when there's such a shortage of harvesters and not willing to work long hours, we're facing the situation when the room is overpicked, people refuse to work at all. So grower is forced to destroy the crop or pay by the hours for harvester to separate the room. At the moment, nearly every single mushroom farm in Europe using a Sporgon as a fungicide for to treat Verticilium. But from October 2023, this year, it will be banned in the entire European Union countries, and that will definitely bring 20 to 30% more pins on the bed with the same growing regime. So the growers will have to learn again how to grow mushrooms, because like I explained before, everybody trying to underpin the room a little bit and bring the good stagger so the harvesters could pick them easily. But now they will have to learn again how to grow and how to pick without a Sporgon. And every single country in the EU will be forced to do it. Well, we came out with the new strain called Exxcalibur, basically from one simple reason. There is no place in the world anymore where people want to work long hours to the separation when they working for less money, because picking speed on the separation could go down 4 or 5 times compared to the medium or picking large size mushrooms. Well, our strain giving a little bit less pins, giving the same yield, and it's in its DNA that create a stagger. So the pins coming a bit later, but they keep coming every day. So even without Sporgon, we can assume that the number of pins will be similar to the classic strain with Sporgon, and the stagger will be maintained. Well, the problem with U1 is that gives perfect quality mushrooms, but it underperforming in yield, because it's basically nearly impossible to overpin U1 strain because of its nature. And Exxcalibur, it's not U1 strain, it's a hybrid strain, but it's in the DNA that gives the stagger. You can overpin Exxcalibur, you can underpin or get right amount of pins. On U1, it's basically nearly impossible because U1 always gives you a low number of pins. What I mean is, if you switch to Exxcalibur and will be working on Exxcalibur without the Sporgon and without the changing growing regime, that should give you the same amount of pins and maybe even better stagger. Well, there is a number of issues with mushrooms growing tight or growing in clumps, which doesn't happen that much on Exxcalibur. The first one is that the mushroom growing in clumps have to share the food and oxygen in the very tight environment, so they're getting misshaped. Then when the harvesters have to touch them, because they're growing tight, they're getting nail damage and bruising. And even if the clump is separated and one single mushroom is left from the clump, it's already discolorated and misshaped. So if you, for example, if you speed up your picking rate by 20%, you can have 20% less harvesters, 20 less trolleys, 20 less rooms in the hotel for the foreign workers, or couple of cars less for local workers, which is a big saving. And the people that left gonna pick same amount of mushrooms, will give them higher wages, or they can our same amount of people can work less hours. So if you want to keep the same wages in less hours, the picking speed have to go up by 10, 50, maybe 20%. And the only way to achieve that is to provide them a room with no clumps and good stagger, when there is very little separation, and they immediately can go and pick middle and big size mushrooms with the better speed and work less hours for the same amount of money. On the day 9 of airing, from what we see so far on the classic strain, you can see around 70% pins already on the bed, and 20-30% more will come when Exxcalibur is exactly a positive. You can see only 30%, maybe 40% of the pins, and 60-70% will still come. And Exxcalibur can fix also the harvesting mistakes. Like if you do the separation too much on the first 2 days, and you leave only middle and big sizes, and the quality can go off too quickly, because you must always maintain at least 3, maybe 4 generations on the bed. And with Exxcalibur, the pins coming even during the first flash. So even if you pick too much small sizes mushroom on the first 2 days, this generation will show up later anyway, and that can even help the harvesting mistakes. Exxcalibur, compared to our classic strains, can give little bit less pins with the same growing regime, or a bit more pins if you like. So you can choose, because it's not that classic U1 which always gives you less pins. You can choose the amount of pins, but if you won't change anything, you will get few less pins, which can give you the exactly same yield, but gives you better quality, because if it doesn't grow in clumps and there is less separation, there's less nail damage, there's less bruising, there's less competition for oxygen and food. When the mushroom grow in the clumps, there is a higher pick rate, which can give harvesters more money for less hours.